Hi, my name is Stephen Davis, and I'm a systems engineer for Arista Networks. Today, we're going to get into a quick tech tip that's centered around Arista EOS, or Extensible Operating System feature that I think is often overlooked, but is, I think, invaluable from a efficiency standpoint. It has some serious efficiency gain opportunities that it offers those of us that are in the CLI on a regular basis and just kind of don't want to type the same command, X amount of times each day. To have a shorthand version, I think really benefits both the troubleshooting process as well as the configuration process, as we'll see in one of my examples. So let's jump into it. Here we are on the CLI. If we go into configuration mode, to define an alias, the first thing you do is obviously type alias, and within the alias command construct, you can see some features and switches that we can use. But for our first example, we're going to do something quite simple. So often a command that network engineers use and run regularly is something like onto show run to see the running configuration of the device you're administrating. And that's a command that's ran, depending on the engineer, quite regularly. So why not define an alias that shortens that process a little bit? And so to do so, like I said, if we do alias, and then in this scenario, let's define show run as SR, and then that being the alias. And then now we need to define the actual command that EOS is going to receive to equate to what SR actually means, which is show run. All right, so from here we can still do show run, but we can also now just do SR. So as you can see, we've saved ourselves some precious keystrokes to be used for something more productive. Another example of this that you might find useful is the command show interface counters, and then rate. So this particular command allows you to see interface saturation, to see if there's any concerns there. And oftentimes people will use this command in conjunction with the non-zero command, which allows you to only see the interfaces that obviously don't have zero in their columns, in all of their columns per se. This is a lab, so as a result, all of the actual data plane ports are at a zero state, and as such, the NZ switch only shows the management port, which is the port I'm SSH through, which makes sense. But if you were in a production environment, it would be likely that all of the interfaces would be non-zeroed, and you'd quickly be able to deduce, if there's an interface that's having issues in one way or another. So let's go ahead and define an alias for this particular command. So here we are, alias srnz being the alias we're defining, and then the command that equates to. So if we hit enter, from now on, all we have to do is srnz, and we can see that the desired output, and no longer burden ourselves with laborious commands of a multi-word nature. All right, so let's get into something a little more sophisticated, shall we? Because aliases can do single line jobs, or they can accomplish the work of a multi-line command set, this being an example. So within this alias example, we're defining an alias known as set-bare metal. And the first thing I want to point out is these double bangs equate to commented out. So basically this allows you to document what your alias is doing. So, and then after that, we have sequence numbers, much like an access list, that are executed obviously sequentially. And in this particular alias, we have various uses. So this use case would be, say you're a data center network engineer and you have systems people approaching you regularly asking for you to configure port X or Y to allow for a server to be connected to, and that particular port needs to be in a port channel, and it needs to have access to VLAN X or Y, etc. So Instead of having to define each of these individual commands for every single port request, you can define an alias that that aggregates those individual commands into one atomic operation per se. So let's let's elaborate on what this does. So first we go into configuration mode with sequence 10. Sequence 20 goes, or I'm sorry, 10 goes into config mode. Sequence 20 goes into interface mode, and the variable %1 matches this field or this field. So in this scenario, you would type set-bare metal E1, comma 2, or E1, or whatever you wanted to type. And then that variable would transpose itself into this particular capacity. So it would be interface E1, comma 2, etc. The next sequence 30 would be channel-group variable 2, which is 100, mode active. So channel group 2 or channel group 100 mode active, activating LECP on this interface, and so on. So each of these are variables that you can populate in the actual activation of the alias initially. So as you can see, this is actually a pretty useful use case for aliases. And as you see, it kind of iterates throughout the process. One thing to point out here is that we've used the third variable twice, actually, when we define the description on the actual physical interface up here, down here. And then when we go into the next interface, we're also calling out variable 3, which is PO100. So you can reuse those variables. So let's try this out and see how it looks. Okay, so to utilize this, I'm just going to do set-bare metal, and then from there, I'm going to actually, let's define, let's do ETH10, and then we'll do port channel 100, PO100, and then for description, I'm going to say server 42, and in this scenario, I'm just going to define VLAN 10, and I hit enter. So what did this do? Let's go ahead and look. Show run int ETH10. ETH10 now has a description based on the alias, as well as it's assigned to port channel 100. If we go show run int PO100, you can see that PO100 has been created with the relevant description, the requested access VLAN, as well as a spanning tree port fast has been enabled. So that's essentially an example of a little more sophisticated multi-line alias option that you can utilize for your benefit. And the sky's the limit from here. There are many other even more complex and interesting use cases for aliases, but I would definitely encourage you to take the time to delve into this cool little nifty feature within Arista's EOS and see what it can do for you. Thanks for watching.